Okay, so if this is me and I'm taking the test, it says I have to show algebraically. But I do have a calculator, so what I would do is I would quickly type in the equation that's provided to me, and this will show me where the real roots are. So if they're nice answers, I can easily identify. Remember, if it asks you to list all the possibilities, we learned this Friday. So I have plus or minus 1, 2, 4, 8, and plus or minus 1. And remember, our back numbers are the numerators and the denominators are down below. We will run over that on Friday. Watch a video if you were not here or you will feel lost. Okay, so when I'm graphing here, I'm like, oh, I think I can already see the answers. It appears like it's -2, -1, and 4. Let's check. Second trace answer, -2, it does work. Whenever y is 0, it is a solution, a real solution. -1, confirming, and confirming 4. Okay, so what do I do here? I know in my mind that -2, -1, and 4 works. So I'm going to use synthetic division. I called it the mama method in class. It reminds me to multiply, add, and so on. So I'm going to start with the -2. So -2, I'm going upside down. There's x to the third, x to the second, x to the first, and no x's. 3, 2, 1, none. Mama method, bring down the first number. As a quick reminder from class, this is what we always multiply with. -2 times 1 is -2, add down. -2 times -3 is +6, add down. -2 times 4 is +8. I've got it right. That's my answer. Okay? So x equals -2 is an answer. X equals -2 is an answer. Now how can I get the remaining two answers? I could show the synthetic division, I call it the mama method, for the next two that I've already identified on the calculator, or I could use factoring to see if that works. No x's, 1x, and 2x's. Do I know two numbers that multiply to equal -4 and combine to give you -3? Do you know two numbers that multiply to equal -4 and combine to give you -3? -4 and what else? +1. Multiplies, combines. Great. So one answer when I set this equal to 0. One answer is 4. The other answer when I set this equal to 0 is -1. I showed algebra to get these answers. I could also have used synthetic division to do the other two. Now, when we did this in Friday in class, we had I think A through I. We went through all this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to identify -2, -1, and +4. And remember, it's important we also identify the y-intercept. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so what does this look like? I have right here, I have an odd positive. What does odd positive look like? Strike that robotic pose. What does it look like? Up on the right, down on the left. So I'm going to come down, grab this, come back, up. It's just a sketch. Then I'm going to answer the end behavior. As I go to the far left, I'm heading down. And as I go to the far right, every one of these answers I want 2. And if you don't have every one of these answers for 2, 3, and 4, I want 2 answers. I want a real roots answer, and I want a complex roots. So I'm going to write real and complex. Real is how many x-intercepts do you see? Complex are the imaginary ones we cannot see. So the first thing to do is please put a box around quadratic. Quadratic means there's going to be 2 answers. Okay, so I look right here at the x-axis, and how many times it crosses the x-axis will demonstrate to me the number of roots. How many times does it cross? 0. So there's 0 real, and these two have to the degree of the function, and there's 2 complex. Coming up to the next one, write down real and write down complex. Okay, it says this is cubic. What does cubic mean? What degree is cubic? Okay, they have to add up to 3. How many real answers or x-intercepts do you have? 3. That means there's 0 complex. Okay, and this one, quintic. Does anybody remember what was quintic? 5. Quintic is 5. How many reals do I see? 3, because there's 3 x-intercepts. That means there's 2. We're skipping ahead a few problems here. We can always go back. So how do we identify all of the zeros? And we're supposed to test, is this a factor? Is this a factor? So how do we do that? Anybody have any ideas how we can do that? We're going to divide it exactly. So put it out front. And okay, and I'm going to write, we have 3x cubed minus 5x squared plus 10x minus 3. Be careful that nothing is missing. 3, 2, 1, and no x's. Okay, everything's there. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start by, if I can grab a different color here, I'm going to underline and underline. Do you guys remember what you wrote on your paper when we learned this? What was the first one? M for multiplying, D for distributing, CH for change. So I'll put this down if anybody needs it. Multiply, distribute, change, combine, and bring down. Okay, here we go. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, got that. 3 times 1 is 3. How many more x's do I need? 2 more. So 1x squared is my answer. So I need to find the x squared column and write 1x squared. Done with multiplying. Now I'm going to distribute. 1 times 3 is 3. There's 3 x's. 1 times 1 is 1, and there's 2 x's. Done with distributing. Now I change the signs and everything in the second row. Change, change. And now I combine. These are just opposites of one another, so when you combine them, they disappear. Negative 5 and negative 1 is a negative 6x squared, and B for bring down. Okay, same process again. 3 times what is negative 6? Negative 2. And how many more x's do I need? 1 more x. So negative 2x. Okay, done with multiplying. Done with multiplying. Now I'm going to go down to distribute. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Total of 2 x's. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Total of 1x. Change signs. And now combine. Opposites, so they cancel out. And these two combine to give you 12x and bring down. 3 times what is 12? The answer is 4. You don't need any more x's. 4 times 3 is 12 with an x. Positive 4 times 1 is 4. Good so far, guys? Okay. All right, and now I'm going to change here. So change signs combine to get negative 7. So my question for you is 3x plus 1 a factor? How do you know it's not? Right, if it has a remainder, it's not a factor. Maybe you want to write that down. If it has a remainder, it is not a factor. When it says justify your answer, please put that in words. Because it has a remainder, it is not a factor. For those that did this over the weekend, number 8, does number 8 give us a factor as well? Or does it work out nicely? Yes or no? I'm confused by your answer. Is there a remainder? Yes. Okay, number 7, is there a remainder for 7? Okay, let's practice number 7. Okay, so we want to find one that does not have a remainder. It'll be nicer for us to put together here. All right, let's do this one together. So I'm going to put out 4x plus 3. Inside, I got to make sure 3, 2, 1, nothing. Okay, nothing's missing. 12x cubed minus 11x squared plus 9x plus 18. I'm going to quickly go through this one a little bit quicker than the past one. I know 4 times 3 is 12, and I need 2 more x's. 4 times 3 is 12 with 2 more x's. Okay, now I'm going to distribute. 12x cubed plus 9x squared. Now I'm going to change the signs, change, and combine down. You're watching my math to make sure I don't make a mistake as I'm rushing through this. I know 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. I need 2 x's. That means I need to attach 1 more. Okay, distribute. Negative 20x squared. Distribute. Negative 15x. Now change the signs. Change and change. Combine. Make sure music is off, please. 9 and 15 is going to be 24x. Bring down the 18. 4 times 6 is 24. No x is needed. Distribute, change signs, and we end up with nothing. that tells us that this is a factor of this polynomial. This is a factor. All right. So what if it told us to identify all the zeros? Well, if this is a factor, that means I can set it equal to 0. If it asks to identify all the zeros, I can set it equal to 0 and solve. And this tells me that negative 3/4 would be a 0. Remember, I want 3 zeros here. At most, I could have potentially 3 real, and at most, I could potentially have 2 complex. I'm going to take this top portion, 3x squared minus 5x plus 6, within your group right now. As I press pause, I want you to ask yourself, can you factor and solve this? Do you know two numbers that multiplied to give you 18 and combined somehow to give you negative 5? No. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6 doesn't work. What if you need to solve it, but factoring doesn't work? What do we always go back to? Okay, are you ready? I'm going to time you. Have a minute and a half to do the use the quadratic formula to solve for our 2 remaining answers. Ready? Begin. Problem only asked us to check and see if this is a factor and then justify. I did more than that because I know you have problems in your test that are asking you to do more. So I just incorporated it into this problem. So is this a factor? The answer would be yes. You justified with algebra, and then you'd have to state, since there's no remainder, 4x plus 3 is a factor. Okay? Now I'm preparing you for other problems in the test. What if this said list the other zeros? Well, if this works, it means it's a 0. So set it equal to 0 and solve. That means that negative 3/4 is an answer here. I want to show you, I don't want you to waste your time, I want you just to watch. If I would plug in 12x to the third, subtract 11x squared plus 9x plus 18, and I graphed it, we should see an answer of negative 3/4. So watch, second trace value, negative 0.75, which is equivalent to negative 3/4. Can everybody see how that works? Okay, so that's one answer. Now, when this answer is 0, I take the top part. I personally think that factoring is easier to solve, but not everything is factorable. This is an example. When it's not factorable, you rely on the quadratic formula. So I plugged in 3, negative 5, and 6 for my A, B, and C, and I continued to reduce it. So what are the solutions? These are the solutions. By the way, how many of them are real? 1. How many are complex? 2. What if they would have asked you to write this in factored form? Factored form. Then it would look like this. F of x equals, okay, this is one factor. We've already proved that this is a factor, so I'm going to write 4x plus 3. Now, how do I write this I? I go back to what it was up top. 3x squared minus 5x plus 6. Factored form, identifying the solutions. Those are just additions to this problem that I want you to understand. And now justifying, is this a solution to is x squared minus 1 a factor? No. Now you have to write it, other than just algebra, what is your justification? Why is it not a factor? Has a remainder. Okay, I'd like you to write this out on that separate piece of paper that I asked you to pull out. For this problem, I want us to quickly review what it looked like when we had an answer like this. So you can have answers that look similar to this, where you have two answers and it doesn't have to have an I. So maybe this would just be 5 plus the square root of 47 over 6. You can have two answers. One is positive and one is negative. So again, right here we have three solutions. One real and two complex. This is not complex because it has a square root. This is complex because it has an I. So in this problem, it tells me I have a quadratic function. So that is degree 2. It means I have two solutions. And it provides me one of the solutions. Remember, if something is a solution, when I write it in factored form, let me take a step back here. What if I told you 2 is a solution? If a 2 is a solution, when I write it in factored form, what do I put inside? X minus 2. Okay, keep that in mind. So if this is a solution, I would write down x minus this quantity. X minus this quantity. Now, I can tell that I had to use the quadratic formula to solve this particular quadratic function. So if this is one part, I know the other part would be x plus x equals 1 plus the square root of 5. I just want to demonstrate that. It is like if I told you x equals 5 plus I radical 47 over 6, guess what the other solution would be? X equals 5 minus I radical 47 over 6, okay? If I give you 1, you know what the other would be. Same thing here. If I tell you this is a solution, I'm not telling you the opposite. I know the opposite will be with just the opposite symbol in between. So here's one answer. Now here's the other. X minus, and let's write that down, 1 plus radical 5. In both situations, I have subtraction. Remember, we always do subtraction here. And then 1 is the given, and 1 is the opposite one that I had to come up with. Now I need to work on polynomial operations. We're going to multiply these. I'm going to do 6 operations here. I'm going to take this x times all 3, this 1 times all 3, this 5 times all 3. But before I do that, I want to distribute. So please help me in distributing. X minus 1 plus radical 5. X minus 1 minus radical 5. Okay, so time to do polynomial operation. I'm going to take this times all 3. X times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is negative 1x. X times negative radical 5 is negative radical 5x. Okay, I'm going to take this times everything. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And negative 1 times negative radical 5 is a positive radical 5. Last, taking the radical 5 times all 3. Radical 5 times x is a positive radical 5. Radical 5 times negative 1 is a negative radical 5. Okay, now this is sometimes it's more complicated. You forgot this since 8th and 9th grade. Positive times a negative. Positive times negative is a negative, and 5 times 5 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5. Okay, let's see what we can simplify. Here's one negative radical x and another negative radical x. So I have x squared minus 2x. Here is a negative radical 5x and a positive radical 5x, so they cancel. Here is a positive radical 5 and a negative radical 5, they cancel. And 1 minus 5 is negative 4. This is the quadratic function that contains this as one of the given zeros. Let's write this problem down. So you are to write a quadratic function in standard form given that one of the zeros is x equals 1 minus the square root of 2. Use the previous example and work with your partner. I'm going to give you. So if this is one solution of the quadratic function, the other solution will have a plus sign. So to come up with a quadratic function in standard form that has these two roots, x minus 1 minus the radical 2, 1 plus radical 2. Then I'm going to distribute minus 1 plus radical 2. Minus 1 1x, positive 1, positive radical 2, positive radical 2x, negative radical 2, and negative 2 times 2 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Okay, let's simplify here. So there's only 1x squared, and I have negative 1x, and negative 1x is negative 2x. And these two are exactly opposite, so they cancel out. These two are exactly opposite, so they cancel out. And 1 minus 2 is negative 1. 18 and 18. We are told this is a factor. Please listen closely without any talking. If this is a factor, that means I can set it equal to 0 and solve. If it is a factor, that means the remainder is 0. If it's a factor, the remainder is 0. So what number goes out front? Add 4, x equals 4. Big mistake students want to put is they want to put it, the students want to put here, sorry, I did this wrong. This was an x plus 4, my fault. So you're putting a negative 4 out front. You set, if this is a factor, as it states it is, you set it equal to 0 and solve. Whatever you get goes out front. Okay, is there anything missing here?
Yes.
We have a 3, a 2, a 1, and a 0. Is there anything missing?
Oh, no.
Okay, so let's write it down. 2x cubed plus 7x squared plus 8x minus 8. Now, if it's a factor, what's the final answer going to be?
0.
So put a 0 here. Okay, so bring down the first one. What does it stand for again? Bring down the first number, then we start with multiplying. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. So multiply, then add down. Multiply, and you're like, how do I add an 8 and a 4? Well, let's go backwards here. What has to be here in order to get a 0?
8. Positive 8.
Positive 8. What has to be here in order to get a 0? Okay, now, how do I get that 8? In order to get that 8, I have to ask myself, please no talking, negative 4 times what is positive 8? Anyone? Negative 4 times what is positive 8? Okay. Now, what should I replace a with so that when I add it, because I'm adding straight down, when I add it to 4, I end up with a negative 2. So what plus 4 equals negative 2? There's your answer. A equals negative 6. Done. Your next one. If this is a factor, I set x minus 2 equal to 0, and I solve and x equals 2. 3, 2, 1, 0. Nothing's missing. X cubed plus 2x squared plus 8x minus 6. If it's a factor, I'm going to end up with 0. Bring down the first number of 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Add straight down to get 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, this doesn't make sense. How can I add an A and an 8? Well, if I'm going to get 0, what needs to go right here?
Positive 6.
Okay. And 2 times what is positive 6? So, A, don't say the answer, please let people think. What number plus 8 equals 3? Please don't say it. What number plus 8, because we're adding straight down, equals 3? Anyone? So A equals negative 5. Done. In this problem, we're going to identify all the zeros. Notice there should be 5, and the number in back is the 0 that's missing. Now, there is a slight way you get to cheat here. There's a slight way you get to cheat. So we can plug this in, and so I would have x to the 5th plus 2x to the 4th minus x to the 3rd. Subtract 10x squared subtract 8x plus 0. Okay, so I want to find just one of the real zeros. And, okay, it appears like one of them that does not have a fraction to it would maybe be 1. Let's check. Second trace value. Is 1 an answer? It is not. Let's check here. Maybe 1, 2, maybe 2.5. Otherwise, I can just use it by actually figuring out what the exact 0 is. So there's left bound, right bound, and back to it. Okay, that's not nice. Second trace. Let's try to find the 0 for the next one. Okay, that's not pretty. Hoping this last one will be a little bit nicer for us. I'm trying to find one that is not irrational. They all look to be irrational for me. Okay, let me come back to this problem in just a second. What my problem was, I did not enter an x here. So this should look a little better now. Let's see. Okay, so it appears like one of the answers is 0. Second trace the value. It is. I can see one answer is 0. So I'm going to put a 0 off to the side. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, everything's accounted for. 1x to the fifth, 2x to the fourth, negative 1x to the third, negative 10x, negative 8, and 0. Okay, plugging the first one in. So remember, I'm going to do diagonal division. Multiply, add straight down. Multiply, add straight down. Multiply, add straight down. Multiply, add straight down. Multiply, and add straight down. It does work. Okay. I'm kind of cheat here. I can see it looks like another answer occurs at -1. That is true. So I'm going to use this remainder. I'm going to use these now instead of up here and go 1, 2, -1, -10, and negative. Okay, so I'm bringing down the first. Multiplying, add straight down. Multiplying, add straight down. Multiplying, add straight down. Multiply, it works again, which I knew it would based on the graph. Okay, so I've done -1, 0. It looks like 2 is also a solution. It is because y is 0, so I'm going to use the proportion to do 2. So 1, 1, -2, -8. We don't use the zeros behind. Bring down the first. Okay, multiply to get 2, add down to get 3. Multiply 6, add down 4. Multiply 8, it does work, which I did know is going to work because these are all solutions. Alright, what do I do now? Because it says there's 5 solutions and it's just identify all of them. One solution is x is 0. One solution is x is -1. One solution is x is 2. But I need to find 2 more. I take whatever is remaining here, and remember I'm going to go backwards. So 0 equals 4 with no x's, 3 with 1 x, and 1 with 2 x's. And now I'm going to solve. I can solve either using factoring if possible or quadratic formula. 1 times 4 is 4. It is not possible for me to come up with two numbers that multiply to equal 4 and combine somehow to give you a positive 3. So I'm going to rely on the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, x equals negative, plugging in a b of 3, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals -3 plus or minus 9 minus 16 all over 2. X equals -3 plus or minus. This would give you -7, but we can't have a -7, so I comes out and 7 stays inside. And here are your 2 other answers. X equals 0, x equals -1, x equals 2, and x equals -3 plus or minus I squared to 7, 2 answers.